Okay guys, what I'm doing today is weathering. I've recently weathered the jerry can, the winch and the jack from the Yeah Racing crawler accessory kit. I've had a lot of people ask me how I've done it, so I'm going to do this video to show you. I used the Tamiya Weathering Kit C, Tamiya Weathering Kit A, some Tamiya paints. They sort of vary on what colour effect etc. you're going for. The big bright paints are essentially what they used to be when it was brand new. That'll make sense when we do the other winches. So let's get straight into it. What you need is, well, if you're doing it this way, the weathering kits, some paints, paint brushes, some water and tissue paper basically. So what we're going to do first is put some paint on this winch, leave that to dry. We might even do both. Paint both, let them to dry. I'll start weathering this whilst they dry. So first things first, shake your paint. If you don't shake paints like these, you'll end up with watery stuff on top, thick stuff on the bottom, and your paint turns out to be terrible. Shake them. I've already shaken this one. So first thing I'm going to do is grab my little brush, crack open my paint. Now, if you were painting this to be pretty, you would make, you would do a really good job, if you excuse my shadow, you'd do a really good job and try and paint it really nice. But because this is aged, when you paint on your red, you're painting it where the paint is left. Where the black is, as you paint it, you can leave spots where paint has come off. It looks like you're sort of being a bit lazy with your paint, but this will actually help the effect in the end. So I'll paint it just like that. Once we add our weathering powders and things like that later on, it will actually, this will give more depth. Now when I first did the winch that I've already done, it was just a big experimenting session. I'm no expert, in my opinion, with these weathering kits. I bought a couple to see if I could do it, basically, to have a go, give it a try and see how it came up. So far I'm really happy with the results I'm getting, and it's all through trial and error. So mess about with it. Worst case, go and buy yourself some cheaper scale accessories. But that's the brilliant thing with these kits, they are cheap. So you can go and buy one of these kits, sit down and just play. Enjoy creating something a little bit different to what you might normally do with your RC stuff. So as we can see, I know my hands might be in the way sometimes. I'm just sort of roughly painting over it. I'm happy to have some black spots poking through. I won't worry about filming painting the second one because it's exactly the same process and I don't want to bore you guys. So give this a quick bit more paint, a bit underneath, and we've pretty well got this one ready to sit and dry. Now we do want to paint it haphazardly, not perfectly, but you want to cover all of it. If you've got spots that it's obviously not painted, it will show when you finish your product. Right, a little bit more around here. Keep in mind too, with these winches, there's only so much you will actually see. Right, so that's the first step. Give it a rough paint job. I will sit that aside to dry. Whilst that does so, I will move my paint out of the way, move the winch out of the way. Next step is this little fella. To weather this, I'm going to grab some black paint. I'll give that a quick bit of a shake. We will be using both of these weathering kits. These are like makeup essentially. according to my partner. She had a real good laugh when I first opened these up. That's what you get. Powders, a little makeup brush according to my partner, a little makeup brush with a sponge on the end, and the powders. Now, the first thing I found with these powders is they are set reasonably hard. So what you want to do, grab yourself something like a little screwdriver, just give it a bit of a scratch. When you give it a scratch, you'll get the powder sitting there. It's easy to be used. If you don't do this, you will just find yourself wiping your sponge or your brush around in the bottom and getting nothing out. Okay, so this is pretty well how I set myself up. I will grab my little brush again, wipe off my water and red paint. This is the bonus with weathering. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to stress too much about, I don't want to get this colour or that colour. Now, what I'm going to do is a bit of a thick spill line down this part of the tank. I'll give it a rough bit of a hit of black, dip my brush in my water, and then just stretch the black out further. Bit around the lid. This is where your tissue paper comes in. I just give the can a little bit of a dab on the sides to take off where the excess is, and just to give you a line that looks like something may have spilt down there and dirt sat on it, etc. Something also with this, around thick join lines like the bottom of the tank. You have to excuse if you can't see a little bit. Around the bottom of the tank, spots like that. Dip my brush in water, sort of stretch it out a bit in little grooves. Just little random spots here and there. Grab your tissue paper. Just a gentle dab. And keep in mind, this isn't going to look perfect at this stage. We're just laying down the foundations for what will be an old looking rusty fuel tank. I'll do some more in the back, up around the handle. Bit of a mark around the bottom. A little bit of a dab. I don't want to go crazy dabbing, otherwise you will take all of the paint off. That's essentially our first step done. And this is the brilliant thing with doing this sort of thing. You can one step it all the way through. You don't sort of have to wait. With the winch, because you put a coat of paint on it, you have to do the coat, wait, and then do your next part. Now I will wipe off as much of the black paint as I can. This is where I'm going to start to apply some of the rust colour. So I'm going to dip my brush in my water. I'm going to gently brush a little bit of water on where I want the rust to be. Example, around the top of the cap, I'll do some rust around there, around here where the fuel spilt, and just a few more different spots here and there. Just a little dip of water. Right, it's good. I've got some nice dirty water sitting on top. I'll get my brush end, just dab it inside my powder here, and then start dabbing it on so as it sits thickly. I know it's a bit hard to see what I'm doing. Just sort of dab that on like this. Wherever that water sits, this powder will sit. You'll find yourself, you'll do a little bit, add a bit more water, do a little bit more, and I think this is half the fun. What starts as a nice clean scarlet accessory quickly deteriorates into a rusty old fuel can that someone really hasn't cared about too much in a long time. So I've just run a little bead of water down the front. I'll just gently dab on some of the powder. Now, I'm not sure how we will see this, but it's already starting to look reasonably well aged. Because it's a powder, you also get a good texture with it as well. So what I'm going to do, so that I don't bore the hell out of you guys, I'm going to go all around this tank with the orange, then I'll come back and we'll start with some black and some silver to show you how I use those to detail edges and where paints come off, etc. Okay, so I have gone around this whole can, give it a good dust with the orange rust colour. The next step, with the silver that comes with the Tamiya weathering kit, if you use it on your corners and sharp edges, it will look like the paint has been rubbed off. So if someone's grabbed this handle a lot over time, that's where it's going to come off. So I will put a little strip of water on this side, a little strip on this side. I will dab my silver, actually I'll use the sponge end. Use the sponge end and I will wipe it across the handle. Get myself some more. The sponge end does take a bit of getting used to. It is really easy to accidentally wipe off what you've put on. So let's dab some more silver on now. Give it a little brush. Now the trick of it is, you can see in the reflection there, I'll try and give you a good focus here. No, go on camera, cooperate. The silver shines in the light. So once we put some more rust colour over that now, the silver will shine through. That's the plan anyway. And that's where you get your rust look from. I'll also put some black around it too. Some dirty hands have grabbed it. Black is a good dirt colour, especially once you mix it with a bit of your water. So put a bit more silver around these edges. We've got a bit of black. Okay. Now, you can see the silver sort of shimmer in the light, but then you've got your dirty edge because it's a powder. Obviously you've got the dirt that sits on there as well. I'm going to repeat this process now over a few different edges around the whole tank, and then I'll come back and show you how it looks. Okay, so we're starting to win. The tank's really starting to get some age to it. What I'm going to do now is go back to my black paint with some water. I'm going to put a few what I would call dirty, greasy, muddy marks. I'm going to dip my brush in a little bit of water, dip it in my paint, and just put a couple of little spots on. I have to hold this way, otherwise the paint runs. And then I'm just going to dab it with my tissue again until it lightens up enough to look like grease. It is very good fun, this stuff. Once you sort of figure out what sort of look you want and what's going to work with what you're doing, it is really good. You can create lots of different looks and styles. So we're just applying a little bit of paint, a little bit of water. Depending on how thick you want your grease mark, if you want a nice thick one, don't water it down so much. So now I'll run a nice thick grease mark down the front here. I'll just dab it straight in the paint, sort of splotch that on with the brush, and then just start dabbing with the tissue paper, just to give us a nice dirty line. Obviously once that dries that will be lighter. You can see the stuff underneath now, it really looks like it's been there for a long time. Get some more up around here. Another idea too with doing these greasy marks is once you've got some down, then put some more rust over the top, and that'll give you the depth. So I can just go straight now to my rust colour, dab it straight over the top, and then it instantly looks like that's been there for years. So you can see the more you play with this, the more it looks like this can's gone through some pretty rough times, which is lovely. That's what we're going for. We'll do a good healthy line up the side here. Just dab some of that all the way up and down. Grab some of my rust powder, dab that straight over the paint. And the bonus with doing this too is that the powder will stick to the paint and you don't have to worry about it coming off. There you go. That's starting to look like a pretty well used can. I might even do a little bit more on this side. You'll have to excuse me if this video's probably a bit longer than you would have expected. It's hard to try and get across any little tips and tricks with just a few minutes. Like I say, I don't class myself as any expert doing this. This is just how I do it for myself, how I've taught myself how to do it. And given the reaction I've had so far, it seems pretty popular, which is good. So, that there, the light doesn't help. Once that all dries up, it will look like a really nice rusty can. I've got a nice sort of shine on the edge there, just enough to give depth to the stains, and where the paint's come off, I might even do a bit thicker stain down the front. Right, a bit more of the rust powder. Yeah, that's better. Much better. So as you can see, once you start playing with those little ideas, it doesn't take long to turn a perfectly nice clean fuel can into a horrible old rusty messy one. Now I'm going to jump straight in and see if I can smash out this winch without making this video ridiculously long. My paint's probably slightly tacky, which isn't a bad thing. First thing we're going to do is some black and silver powder together all around the edges. Hopefully that'll stick. Here it is. Some more silver. This silver represents where the paint has worn away. Give it a good dust. Might even scratch a little bit more of that up. Good thing with these Tamiya kits too is the paint lasts a decent. The weathering powder lasts a good amount of time. You get your money's worth out of them. So dab it all around the curves, the edges. I might even apply a touch of water to some of these thicker edges. I'm not phased that there's still a little bit of black paint in there. That's, if anything, going to add depth and detail to what we're doing. So silver, there we go, that's a better cover. Excuse me. Add some silver around here. So I'm going to do this one as quick as I can so that you guys don't get bored. So, some silver detail. Next step for me will be, I'll do some black splotches. Again, same thing as the fuel can. This is grease, dirt, paint's come off, age. Give that a bit of a dab. I'm going to go straight over the top of that with some rust. Just scratch some of that up. It's easy to get lost in the world of rusting. I've had a few people say, you want to be careful now, because once you start rusting things, it's hard to stop. It's okay, I like the rust. Just going to run some water around some spots I'd like to rust a bit more. The black paint on your brush with a bit of water is really good for rusting up the bright silver stuff, or dirtying up rather. I've already had a few people correct me on what rusts and what doesn't. But the black paint, the water, helps your dust stick. Obviously I'm racing this one. The one I did last night I spent a bit more time on it, but I want to try and get this one done so you guys can see pretty much how I did it, and then that way it might give you the confidence to try it yourself. You can use the sponge with this to dab it on thicker. Give you a bit of a focus there, if I can. Come on, camera. Try and give you an idea of how it's coming up now. There we go. So already we've gone from that to that. Now I can sit there and I can play with this for however long until I've got the right amount of rust, the right amount of shine, the right amount of dirt. That's the basic process. The same goes for the bucket. I don't think I'll worry about doing that because this video is already probably too long. That's the process. It's paint if you're going to paint. Dab on your rust. Don't be scared to use your paintbrush, your water, things like that, and just experiment. So that's after however long this video is, a bit of a play around, just to try and add some horrible rusty details that we all seem to really like these days. I hope this helps you and gives you a little bit of confidence in trying the weathering process. It is good fun. I suggest you have it a try, and I do suggest, shameless plug, check out Year Racing stuff. That's the scale accessory kit I've used for these winches. It's a good way of putting a winch on your truck that looks nice and rusted without spending a fortune. I think these kits are about $10 on A-Main Hobbies, RC Mart, places like that. Go and check them out. That's pretty much it for this one, I believe.